All right, so welcome to another deep dive, and today we're going right into the thick of it. Crypto and AI and what's been happening in the Middle East, specifically on November 20th, 2024. We've got a whole bunch of different sources for this one. We've got a snapshot from the Blockchain DXB podcast. We've got some really new articles, and we've even got some platform analytics just to give us a little more to think about. So yeah, basically, if you're trying to get a feel for where this whole market's headed, who the major movers and shakers are, and what legal things are kind of cropping up in this whole blockchain and AI world.
Yeah.
Especially in the UAE, this is where you want to be.
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting about what we're looking at today is we're seeing how this tech is actually playing out in the real world,
Yeah.
especially in a region like the Middle East that is all about innovation.
Right, yeah. Okay, well, let's jump right into this thing, huh? Let's start with a crypto market overview, maybe using the Blockchain DXB podcast as our jumping off point. So they're reporting that the global market cap is over $3 trillion. A little bit of an increase there. But here's the thing. Trading volume is actually down. And to make things even more interesting, stablecoins make up most of that volume. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that might be a sign that the market is sort of taking a pause. The value is up, but less trading might mean that investors are kind of holding back a little bit, waiting to see what happens, So they're putting their money in stable coins, just kind of chilling out until things become a bit more clear.
Yeah, it's a good point. So what about DeFi? What's going on with that?
Well, according to the podcast, the top platforms in terms of volume are Radium, Uniswap, and PancakeSwap. But when it comes to overall dominance in the market, Bitcoin and Ethereum are still the kings,
Yeah, seems like those two are going to be around forever, no matter what new players come in. Oh, but speaking of new players, let's talk about Dogecoin for a second. Who would have thought that this meme coin would be making headlines again, right?
Right.
But the Blockchain DXB podcast pointed out this kind of crazy surge in activity, like a 41% jump in these big transactions and a 35% increase in active addresses.
Yeah.
That's not just some small change. It seems like the whales are getting involved.
Yeah, it's definitely something to pay attention to, especially because this is all happening even though the price has dropped a bit recently. So it seems like these bigger investors, maybe even institutions, are seeing something in Dogecoin that goes beyond just the whole meme thing. They're not scared of the dips, which could mean that they actually believe in it long term.
Yeah, maybe Dogecoin is actually becoming something more serious now, right?
Yeah.
It's really interesting to think about. But let's switch gears for a sec. Let's get into the legal stuff, which is, things are getting a little messy, especially for DAOs. There's this breaking news that Donald Trump is thinking about nominating Teresa Goody Guillén for the SEC chair position.
Wow. Okay.
So if she gets the job,
Yeah.
this could really shake things up in the crypto world. I mean, she used to be an SEC attorney, and even more importantly, she's an expert in blockchain law.
Yeah.
So she could be really friendly towards crypto.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
This might mean that the SEC will stop just trying to regulate by punishing people. And maybe they'll actually start being more supportive of the whole crypto industry.
Right. Yeah, that would be huge.
Yeah, for sure. But while we're talking about legal challenges, there's this case happening in California that is kind of freaking everyone out in the DAO world. It has to do with Lido, DAO, and a lawsuit claiming securities fraud. And the court ruled that DAO members might actually be held liable under the current partnership laws.
Wow.
So what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
I think this case is raising some really fundamental questions about what DAOs actually are, legally speaking, and how they fit into the laws we already have. The court's decision suggests that everyone involved in Lido's governance, we're talking big venture capital firms like Paradigm Operations, Andreessen Horowitz, and Dragonfly Digital Management, they could all be considered general partners, which means they could be held responsible for what the DAO does. It's like a wake-up call for the entire DAO world,
Right, yeah. So how do we even start to figure this out? The Blockchain DXB podcast did a good job of reminding us what DAOs are, their core. They're decentralized organizations running on blockchain technology, using smart contracts to basically set the rules and manage everything.
Yeah.
It all sounds so futuristic and revolutionary, but then you have these real-world legal problems.
Exactly.
What do we do?
Yeah, it's the very thing that makes DAOs so innovative, being decentralized and autonomous. That's also what makes them so legally complicated. So the question is, should we force DAOs to follow traditional legal rules, even though that might hold back innovation and change their whole purpose? Or should we create entirely new laws that actually work for how DAOs operate?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and the podcast did a good job of laying out both sides. On the one hand, legal recognition could give DAOs like more legitimacy, make it easier for them to work with regular financial institutions. And they would have clear rules for settling disputes.
Right, right. But on the other hand, putting legal structures on them could just create a ton of bureaucracy, slowing down innovation and making them less decentralized. It's this whole tension between encouraging innovation and keeping things accountable.
Yeah, and this isn't just theoretical. It affects how DAOs work all over the world.
Yeah.
They often have members from different countries with different laws. So how do you even create one legal framework that works for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, that's the real challenge, right? It's like we're trying to make this borderless idea of a DAO fit into these legal systems that are all about borders. So it's going to take some really creative thinking, maybe even a whole new way of thinking about how we govern things in a decentralized world.
It's a puzzle, that's for sure. Well, let's move on to another piece of this evolving puzzle, AI and the Middle East. We have this really insightful report from Amazon Web Services. It's called Unlocking the Full Potential of AI in the Middle East. It's got a ton of data and analysis, and it paints a really interesting picture of what's happening.
Yeah, the thing that really jumped out at me is just how quickly the UAE and Saudi Arabia are adopting AI. They're not messing around, and it's already having a positive impact on businesses. It's clear that they see AI as like a major driver for their economies, for growth.
Yeah, and the report doesn't just stop at adoption rates. It goes on to highlight this growing influence of what they call generative AI, and that's across all kinds of business functions: finance, IT, customer experience. It seems like nothing's off limits. So what do you think is driving this widespread adoption?
Well, I think a big part of it is the governments themselves are being really proactive. Both the UAE and Saudi Arabia have these national AI strategies. They're putting a lot of money into infrastructure, talent development, research. They're not just waiting for AI to happen. They're actively shaping how it develops and gets integrated.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of the UAE, they've got some seriously impressive projects going on. They've partnered with AWS on this thing called the Technology Innovation Institute's Falcon Model Family. It's a large language model, a really powerful AI tool. And it just shows how ambitious they are in this whole AI space. It's like they want to become the Silicon Valley of AI in the Middle East.
Yeah, totally. But it's important to remember that with any big technological change, there are going to be challenges. The report actually talks about those too.
Right, you mean things like figuring out the whole regulatory landscape, finding and keeping the best AI talent, and dealing with the costs of implementing these AI solutions, right?
Exactly.
Those are all big hurdles that we got to overcome.
But it's not all bad news. The report actually gives some pretty practical advice on how to tackle these challenges. Things like developing clear AI strategies, prioritizing investments, collaborating with others, and staying ahead of regulations.
It's not just about being optimistic. It's about giving a realistic plan for dealing with all the complexities of AI adoption.
Exactly.
All right, so speaking of navigating complexities, let's zoom in on a specific example of how AI is being used in the UAE. There's this startup called Cam.ai, and they're using AWS to develop some super cutting-edge generative AI solutions. It's a great example of how the region is becoming this breeding ground for AI innovation, attracting investment and encouraging entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's amazing to see this whole ecosystem is blossoming with all these different players, startups, big companies, research institutions, and the governments, all working together to see what they can do with AI.
Yeah, for sure. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's talk about this strategic partnership that's making waves in the UAE crypto space. M2, which is a leading crypto exchange based in Abu Dhabi, has teamed up with Heruko, a company that specializes in advanced treasury management solutions. So what's the big deal about this partnership?
Well, I think this move really shows where the crypto industry is headed, especially in a place like the UAE, which is known for its focus on financial innovation and regulation. M2 is already regulated, operating under the Financial Services Regulatory Authority, the FSRA. And by choosing to partner with Heruko, a company that provides these institutional-grade solutions, they're sending a clear signal. They're all about security, transparency, and doing things the right way.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to connect the often crazy world of crypto with the more established world of traditional finance, right?
Exactly.
So how does this partnership actually benefit M2? What does Heruko bring to the table?
Well, Heroku gives M2 a whole bunch of tools and services that basically take their treasury management to a whole new level. Think real-time insights into their asset flows, which helps them make better decisions. Enhanced risk management, which is super important in a market that's known for its ups and downs. And maybe the most important thing is that they get improved efficiency through streamlined workflows and this single platform that brings everything together.
So it's all about bringing a level of sophistication and stability to their operations. That's going to really appeal to those big institutional investors, right?
Absolutely.
And remember, M2 is already playing by the rules,
Right.
which makes them even more attractive to those institutional players who are looking for a safe and compliant way to get into crypto.
For sure.
It's like they're setting the stage for a more mature and sustainable crypto ecosystem in the UAE, one that can attract serious investment and drive real innovation.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Well, I think we'll stop here for now. When we come back in part 2, we'll dive deeper into what this partnership really means and how it fits into the bigger picture of crypto and AI in the Middle East. So stay tuned.
You know, this partnership between M2 and Heroku, it's really interesting. It seems like it's a pretty clear sign that the lines between traditional finance and the crypto world are starting to blur, you know?
Especially here in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's not just about offering crypto trading anymore. It's like they're trying to create this really strong and secure ecosystem that can attract the big players, you know? And M2 is really going all out to do that. They're not just following the rules, they're setting a whole new standard. I mean, remember, they're regulated by the Financial Services Regulatory Authority, the FSRA, in Abu Dhabi Global Market. And they even have a digital asset business license in the Bahamas. Yeah, that's right. And that commitment to compliance and security, that's really important. They want to bridge that gap between the idea that crypto is risky and the stability that big investors want.
Okay, but let's not forget about the everyday crypto user either. Like, remember that Dogecoin surge we talked about? That wasn't just a random thing. It seems like it's part of a bigger trend.
Yeah, what's happening with Dogecoin is pretty fascinating. It's holding up well, even though the price dropped recently. That increase in active addresses, that 35% jump, tells us that it's not just the big whales making moves. There's a lot more interest in Dogecoin now. Maybe it's finally shedding that whole meme coin image and becoming something more.
Yeah, it's like people are starting to see the potential beyond the jokes. Could this mean that meme coins are actually gaining some legitimacy in the crypto world? It's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. And this ties into that whole market sentiment thing that the Blockchain DXB podcast talked about. They mentioned this extreme greed sentiment, which might sound a bit scary, but sentiment can go both ways. It can lead to bubbles, but it also shows how excited people are about this space and the potential they see in it.
So maybe a little caution is needed, but we shouldn't ignore the enthusiasm either.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance, being optimistic, but also understanding the risks. Speaking of navigating tricky situations, let's go back to those legal challenges for DAOs. We talked about that California court case and how DAO members might be liable, but the Blockchain DXB podcast really got me thinking. Should DAOs even have legal protection in the first place?
Whoa, okay. That's a big question. It kind of goes against the whole idea of what a DAO is, right?
Exactly. DAOs are supposed to be decentralized and autonomous, operating outside of traditional power structures, so forcing them to fit into existing legal frameworks just seems wrong. It's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
It's a real dilemma. The podcast makes some really good points on both sides. Like, on one hand, legal recognition could make DAOs seem more legitimate, make it easier for them to work with banks and deal with regulations.
Right.
But then on the other hand, having all these legal structures could stifle innovation, create a bureaucratic mess that slows everything down and makes them less decentralized.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like trying to find a way to encourage innovation while still having some accountability.
Yeah.
And it's not just about finding a solution for one country. It's about figuring out how to deal with the global nature of DAOs. We need solutions that work for DAOs that operate across borders,
Right,
while still respecting the laws of different countries. It's going to take a lot of collaboration and creative thinking from legal experts, policymakers, and the DAO community itself.
It seems like we might need completely new legal frameworks, ones that can adapt to how DAOs are always changing, but still provide some certainty and protection.
Yeah, you're right. It's about reimagining how we govern things in a decentralized world.
Okay, so let's shift gears again and talk about AI. We mentioned the UAE's AI strategy and that unlocking the full potential of AI in the Middle East report.
Yeah, one thing that really stood out to me in that report was how much emphasis they put on national AI strategies. Countries like the UAE aren't just reacting to AI. They're actively shaping how it develops, investing in research, building infrastructure, and training people.
Right. It's like they're building a whole ecosystem from scratch. And it's working. We're seeing all this AI-driven innovation, with startups like Cam.ai leading the way. They're not just using existing AI solutions, they're creating new ones, pushing the limits of what's possible.
It's really impressive to see.
It really is.
It shows how committed these governments are to this.
Yeah.
But it's not just about what governments are doing. We're also seeing a lot of collaboration between the public and private sectors.
Yeah.
And universities, too.
Yeah, it's like everyone's working together to make the Middle East a global leader in AI. But let's be real, there are some challenges too, right?
Oh, yeah.
The report talked about needing clear ethical guidelines and regulations. And it pointed out that only 37% of organizations in the UAE have a responsible AI policy right now.
Yeah, that's a big issue. As AI gets more powerful and becomes a bigger part of our lives, we need to make sure it's being developed and used responsibly. We need to address bias, protect privacy, and be transparent. It's not just about the technology, it's about the ethical implications.
So how do we find that balance between encouraging innovation and making sure AI is developed responsibly?
It's going to take open communication, collaboration, and a willingness to tackle tough questions. We need ethical guidelines and regulations that can keep up with how fast AI is advancing, and we need to include diverse perspectives in the conversation. Make sure that AI benefits everyone, not just a select few.
It's a global conversation, and it seems like the Middle East is at the forefront of it. But it's not just about ethics and regulations, it's also about dealing with the practical challenges. We need to invest in education and training so people have the skills they need to succeed in an AI-powered world.
Absolutely. We need to close that skills gap and make sure that everyone has the chance to benefit from what AI can do.
Okay, and speaking of AI and its potential, let's not forget about the other countries in the region that are making progress.
Right.
Like Saudi Arabia is pursuing its own ambitious Vision 2030 plan, which has a big focus on AI. They're investing a lot in research and development, bringing in top talent from all over the world, and creating a really supportive environment for AI startups and established companies.
Yeah, it's great to see this kind of regional momentum building around AI.
It's not just about economic growth either. It's about tackling some of the region's biggest challenges, like improving healthcare and education, dealing with climate change, and promoting sustainability. AI has the potential to make a real difference in people's lives.
And that's what makes it so exciting. But we also need to be aware of the potential downsides. We need to make sure AI is used for good, that it doesn't make existing inequalities worse, and that it respects human rights and values.
Well said. It's about using the power of AI to benefit everyone.
Exactly. And remembering that AI is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used in good ways or bad ways. It's our responsibility to make sure it's used wisely and ethically.
Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's take one last look at the crypto market, which is always changing.
Okay.
We talked about stablecoins being dominant, Dogecoin showing some resilience, and the legal hurdles that DAOs are facing.
Yeah, what's becoming really clear is that the crypto landscape is incredibly dynamic. There's constant innovation, new platforms and protocols popping up all the time, and the ways people are using crypto are expanding beyond what anyone imagined just a few years ago.
It's a wild ride, that's for sure. But even with all the volatility and uncertainty, there's this sense of excitement and possibility.
Yeah, crypto and blockchain technology have the potential to disrupt traditional industries, empower individuals, and create a future that's more transparent, equitable, and decentralized.
It's a movement, a revolution, a complete change in how we think about value, ownership, and governance.
And as this technology keeps developing, we can expect to see even more innovative applications and groundbreaking advancements. We're really just at the beginning of this journey, and the possibilities are endless.
Okay, so on that note of endless possibilities, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back in part 3, we'll explore some of those possibilities and talk about what the future holds for crypto, AI, and the legal landscape that's shaping how they evolve. Stay tuned.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into crypto, AI, and the legal side of things, focusing on the Middle East. We've talked about a lot, so let's kind of tie it all together and see what the future might hold.
Yeah, definitely. What are the key takeaways from all this? What should people be paying attention to? And what does it all mean for them as they try to navigate this constantly changing world?
Great questions. Let's go back to the Blockchain DXB podcast one last time.
Yeah.
They mentioned something about USDS, the stablecoin, going live on Solana. The idea is to boost the DeFi liquidity and the total value locked on the platform. That's a perfect example of how the DeFi space keeps innovating and growing. New platforms are popping up everywhere, giving users more options and opportunities. And stablecoins like USDS are a big part of that. They bring stability, which reduces the volatility and makes DeFi more accessible to a wider audience.
Right. It's like creating a bridge between the traditional financial world and the more unpredictable world of crypto. And speaking of bridges, remember that M2 and Haruko partnership, a regulated crypto exchange in Abu Dhabi working with a company that specializes in advanced treasury management. That's a pretty big deal.
Absolutely. It points to a couple of important trends we've been discussing. First, it shows that institutional interest in crypto is real and it's growing. Traditional financial players aren't just watching anymore, they're looking for ways to get involved.
And second, it highlights how important compliance and security are in this space. M2, being regulated, is sending a message by choosing to partner with Haruko, a company that focuses on institutional-grade solutions. They're building trust and making crypto more appealing for mainstream adoption.
Exactly. They're creating a safe and transparent environment that's going to be attractive to those bigger investors who might have been hesitant about crypto before.
So we've got DeFi innovation, growing institutional interest, and a focus on compliance and security. What's the big takeaway from all of this?
It seems like the crypto industry is maturing. It's moving past that early kind of Wild West phase and becoming a legitimate asset class and a real driver of innovation.
That's a great way to put it. And as it matures, we can expect even more amazing developments. It's not just about crypto itself anymore. It's about how it combines with other new technologies like AI. The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
Think about AI-powered decentralized applications, or dApps, that could revolutionize entire industries. Healthcare, finance, supply chain management, we could see streamlined processes, improved efficiency, and lower costs, all while giving users more power and creating new opportunities.
Or imagine DAOs governed by smart contracts and AI algorithms, changing how we make decisions and allocate resources, giving people more control and creating a system that's more fair and transparent.
Those are just a few examples of what the future might hold. And the Middle East, with its focus on innovation and its willingness to push boundaries, is in a great position to lead this technological revolution.
So what does all this mean for our listeners? It means they're living in a time of incredible change. The lines between the physical and digital worlds are blurring, and technology is changing everything we thought we knew.
It's a time of huge opportunity, but also a time to think carefully. We need to stay informed, think critically, and make conscious choices about how we use these technologies.
We have to consider the ethical implications, weigh the risks and the rewards, and work towards a future where technology benefits humanity.
We need to be active participants in shaping this future, not just watching it happen. The future is being created right now, and we all have a part to play.
That's a really important message. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to encourage everyone listening to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions. Learn about DAOs, follow what happens with that California court case, and see what amazing AI advancements come out of the Middle East.
The future is unfolding right in front of us, and it's our responsibility to make sure it's a future we can be proud of.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep diving deep.